As a mom, feeding my kids well is one of my biggest responsibilities, and it's one that I definitely take seriously, especially since I am a dietitian. I know all too well the problems that can arise really from poor diet, nutrient deficiencies, and I just want to give my kids my all in this area. And I know that it can be really challenging. And one of the first things that I want to say here is it is not about perfection. I say this in my course, in my nutrition course. Nutrition is a priority, but it's not paramount. It's not everything. You don't have to have a perfect diet to be healthy, but we also can't discredit the importance of proper nourishment, of getting in nutrients every day that your body relies on to carry out the processes that it needs to carry out. And this is something that is so important, especially for growing and developing kids. So I want to share a little bit of encouragement for all my moms out there in this video, because again, I know that this is challenging. It's something that feels never ending. You are responsible for all of these meals every single day and all of the snacks. There are a bazillion decisions to make when it comes to food, even just for yourself, but then you add in, your children, and it's a lot, and the mental load is a lot. But I wanted to share something with you today that is completely against the norm, but that is something that I do with my kids. And I would tell you that it is above all things that I do when it comes to feeding my kids. This is probably the most important. It's not something that you hear about in the mainstream. In fact, it seems completely counterintuitive, but it's something that I learned about years ago and has completely changed the trajectory of how I approach feeding with my kids, and it has given me so much peace. When I was in school studying nutrition, I learned about a child feeding specialist named Ellen Satter, and she has what she considers the division of responsibility. And listen up, parents, because this will literally change your life when it comes to feeding your kids and the mealtime battles and the stress of, are they eating enough? Are they getting enough nutrition? Am I doing a good enough job here? Listen, I have great news for you. You do not have to carry that. And here is why. The division of responsibility is this. The parent decides what and when to feed, and the child decides how much and whether to eat it. So you as the parent are responsible for feeding, and they as the child are responsible for eating. So let your shoulders relax, take a deep breath. It is actually not your responsibility whether or not your kid eats. And I know that is a tough one to swallow as a fellow mom who loves her kids and wants the best for her kids. Of course, I want them to eat, and our inclination naturally is to want to control that or to meddle in that process, to insert ourselves into it, because we are well-meaning moms who, again, want our kids to eat well. We want our kids to be nourished. We know that it's important. But here's the thing, children have a natural ability to eat. They know how much to eat. They know how much they need to eat to grow at their right pace. And they'll eventually learn to eat what their parents eat when given the right environment. So basically what this looks like in my house is I provide the meals and I provide the snacks that I want my kids to eat. And again, I'm not perfect, and also I don't want to be. I really try and avoid processed food as much as I can, but I also intentionally include some processed food in our lives because I want my kids to see that I view it as no big deal. I want to pass on that food neutrality to my kids. I view that as something that's very important. But I'm also very cognizant of the role of nutrition. So I do try and provide mostly real, nourishing food. So I'm conscious of their preferences, but I do not cater strictly to their likes and dislikes. So for example, I'll make one meal for the whole family. There is no special kids meals. You do not have to do that. Moms, that's not your responsibility. I know that your kids want the separate meal. I know that they want the chicken nuggets and the mac and cheese or the, bread with butter or whatever it is. They want the real simple food because that is what their palate generally wants to accept as a young developing kid. But your job is to provide the food that's going to nourish them, A, and B, it's to not just strictly cater to those likes and dislikes, because you're actually doing them a disservice and you're creating more picky eating by letting them stay in this very narrow kind of like taste bud zone. Your job is to incrementally expand their palate over time, and you're never going to be able to do that if you are always just making the separate meal for them and what they want to eat. I will give the caveat here that I am obviously talking about, I'm not speaking to kids with maybe like developmental disabilities. I do think that that is a totally separate situation, and honestly it's one that I don't know much about because I just haven't dealt with it myself, and it's not something that I've dealt with in the realm of being a dietitian personally, but for your average healthy child, you absolutely can go this route. And trust me when I say, even though it's definitely a relinquishing of control that feels scary and honestly it feels wrong, it will pay off dividends, and it will actually be so much to the benefit of your child. So some of the questions I always get is, well, what if I make them a dinner or a lunch or whatever, and they don't want to eat it? That's fine. They don't have to. It is their choice. It is this practice in relinquishing that responsibility and relinquishing that control. And of course, we do not want our kids to go hungry. But I was always taught that a healthy child is not going to go hungry, okay? Like, they will quickly realize, like, oh, mom is serious about this, and what she makes is what's available. Like, this is my opportunity to fill my belly. I remind my kids probably every day, this is your chance to fill your belly. So, this is your time. There aren't going to be other meals. There aren't going to be snacks immediately after, okay? Like, this is your chance. And when you leave kids to make these decisions on their own and give them that autonomy, what it does is it actually leaves their natural ability to eat intuitively intact. So when we tell our kids, you need to have, finish your vegetables, or eat one more bite of this, or can you eat 3 more bites? And if you do this, I'll give you the dessert. All of that meddling actually really inhibits their ability to eat intuitively, to actually listen to their body's own cues. And over time, they will completely erode to the point where they will not have them anymore. They will have to completely relearn how to eat intuitively. This is exactly why I learned like all about intuitive eating in the first place, because when I grew up, again, very well-meaning, loving parents, finish your plate, or, you're in the clean plate club, good job. You ate so much, good job. Have one more bite of your vegetable so you can have the cookie, or eat 2 more bites of chicken and then you can have this. Like, all of that meddling really messes with that innate ability to eat intuitively, which really does your children a disservice at the end of the day. So again, if my kids don't want to eat something, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. Okay, you don't want the dinner? Okay, well, this is what we're having for dinner. So if you don't want to eat, that's your choice. And then we move on. There's no animosity. There's no anger. There's no mealtime battles. Simply, I relinquish that control, and it's very freeing, my friends. You do not, let me repeat, you do not have to take on this responsibility. If you're following the division of responsibility from Ellen Satter, who is truly an absolute gem in the, kids and nutrition realm, I will tell you that it works, because this felt like one giant experiment with my kids, because again, this is not how I grew up, but it's something that I was taught and logically made a lot of sense to me. So I decided to go down this path with my kids, and I do not meddle in meal times. We don't have any mealtime battles. There are for sure times that they're, whining and complaining that I don't want to eat this, but I just don't give much energy to it. And sometimes that's tough at the end of the day when I'm exhausted and I worked really hard to make this nourishing meal that I know is going to benefit them. And, they make some kind of, they're toddlers. They don't really mean anything by it, but they make some snide comment about how they don't like it. It's human nature to want to get angry and say, well, you have to, but again, it's not doing them any service at the end of the day. So I just let it go. And guess what? My kids, they eat. They actually eat plenty. They are what I would consider fairly good eaters, especially my oldest, now that she's coming up on turning 6. She pretty much eats everything now, and she eats a lot, and she's got a great appetite, and she'll eat pretty much anything I'll put in front of her. The dinner I made last night, I was experimenting with making pasta with fresh milled flour, and you know what? It didn't turn out that great. It really didn't. And I was like, you know what, kids? I'm sorry. Mom was experimenting, and it's not the best, but we've got a meal on the table, and that's what matters. And she just said to me, can you make it the other way next time? I don't really like this. And I was like, you know what? That's fair. I don't really like it either. But you know what? She still ate it because she knew that this is my chance to eat, and I need to eat so that I'm not hungry. And it was not a battle. It was just simply her voicing her opinion, and it was not dramatic, and I appreciated that. And this is from years of raising her to kind of eat whatever is put in front of her, and not in a way that it's forced upon her, but in just this gentle, like, well, this is what we're having, so it's kind of what you have to eat. And she has really come around, and her palate has really been expanding. And another thing I wanted to say is, especially when you're feeding toddlers, because I've got 2 toddlers right now, and we're very much in that phase. All of my kids as babies, they ate whatever I put in front of them. And it was like, wow, I'm doing such a great job, like I'm just killing this. And then they get a little bit older, and they learn that they can say no. And then they're toddlers, and all they want to do is test the boundaries and, push the limits. And so all of a sudden they get really picky. But I just don't really let them be picky. Again, I'm conscious of their likes and dislikes. So I always try and make sure at whatever meal they're eating, there's at least something they're going to eat. Like, I know they're gonna eat the buttered rice, or they're gonna have, the homemade, whether it's sourdough or a bun I made, or, bread with butter, like something, I try and make it a healthy, nourishing option. But, they'll have a glass of raw milk. Like, they're getting nutrition at each meal. They're filling their bellies at each meal. Are they eating everything? No, usually they're not. And most of the time, especially my toddlers, they are more picky, but I just let it ride. And here's the thing. I keep serving the meals. Even if they told me they don't like chili, guess what? Mom and Dad like chili, and it's a food that I would like you to eventually accept, so I'm going to keep making it. Am I going to serve it with bread and butter and milk because I know you'll eat those? Yes, I am. But I'm still going to make the chili, and guess what? I'm still going to put the green peppers in it, even though every single one of my kids so far does not like green peppers. Because here is the thing. Exposure is so important. A kid has to be exposed to a food, up to like 20, I always hear different stats, but we're looking at like at least 20 times, okay? That's a lot of times before they even accept it. And that's not even saying that they're necessarily going to love it. That's just them accepting that it's there and eating it. So don't get stuck in the trap of, well, they're not going to eat that, so I'm not going to make it. No. You keep putting the asparagus on the plate. You keep making the chili. You keep adding in the, vegetable or the ingredient, the beans or whatever that maybe they don't love, but you want them eventually to love. You have to just keep at it. And I know that this is not easy, especially if this is not at all what you're doing now. If you're currently making the special meals and catering to the picky eating. First, I just want to say that you're not doing anything wrong. Like I said, this is very counterintuitive, and it's so not the norm. I wish we were all were given this information before we had kids, but if you weren't, that's okay. You're not doing anything wrong. You are just doing what, you're doing what you need to do, right, to get through the day and to get food into your kids' bellies. But I want you to flip the script and start to tell yourself instead, it's actually not my job whether or not they eat the food. Again, you do want to be cognizant of the likes and the dislikes, because you're not just all of a sudden going to start, feeding frog legs to the kid who only eats cheese sandwiches, obviously. But you're a mom, you know your kids, you know how to incrementally do this in a way that is actually going to work, and free yourself of that responsibility of making sure that they actually eat. Kids are so much more competent in this area than we have been led to believe and that we give them credit for. They can take this on. They can handle this. It is our job instead to just provide the healthy food, provide the balanced diet, provide the exposure to foods so that we can raise competent, intuitive, adventurous eaters, and this is by no means an overnight process. This is going to be a adventure and a journey that you're going to go on with your kids, but you are so capable of this. You can absolutely do it. And here's the thing, when you start to make this change and you stop making the special meals and whatever else, they might protest. And that is their right, okay? They are allowed to, because this is going to be a big switch up for them. But at the end of the day, you know what's best for them, and this is truly in their best interest. And you can make this change for them that is going to absolutely change the trajectory of their health, of how they accept food, and they will take this into adulthood. And then guess what? They will take this to their kids as well. So you are creating generational health by making this one switch. It is so worth the time. It is so worth the effort. I know it's not easy, but I also know that you can totally do this.